us for today's webinar. The truth about vaccines, how to stop disinformation and promote vaccines across the generations. There's no shortage of information about vaccines out there, especially COVID-19 vaccinations, but it's hard to know what to trust and what to share. And with COVID-19 vaccine rates as low as 40% of the eligible population in some states, and vaccine hesitancy skyrocketing, we need the facts more than ever. Today, the Alliance for Aging Research, a Washington, D.C. nonprofit dedicated to advancing healthy aging, has partnered with Generations United to talk about the role grandparents play in their families in spreading the truth, and to help us all get a little bit better at sorting the facts from the fiction. The Alliance has been working in the vaccine space for close to a decade and leads a campaign called Our Best Shot. Next slide, please. Okay, I'll keep going. There we go. Thank you. The objective of this campaign is to educate older adults, their loved ones, and their healthcare providers about the importance of vaccines. We've produced a number of resources over the years, including a vaccine schedule that outlines the vaccines older adults need and shares information on the serious diseases they protect against, an educational video and PSA on how vaccines work and why we need them, a workshop kit with all of the resources needed for a community leader to put on an educational seminar, and more. Today, we're releasing new materials in the Our Best Shot campaign. These materials are supported by GlaxoSmithKline, Securus, and Genentech, and we are grateful for their support. The first new resource is an educational video on influenza. We put this resource together because we wanted older adults and their family to understand the vital importance of getting their annual flu shots, especially as the COVID-19 pandemic overlaps with the upcoming flu season. The video shares the facts on how to prevent the flu through hand washing, social distancing, covering coughs and sneezes, all of the things we've been doing to prevent COVID-19, and also vaccination. It talks about the symptoms of the flu and outlines who's at higher risk of serious complications like hospitalization and death. Spoiler alert, older adults are at high risk due to declining immune systems and more chronic diseases at increased risk. Because of this, older adults should talk to their healthcare provider about whether a high dose or adjuvanted flu vaccine is right for them. While any influenza vaccination is better than no influenza vaccination, these FDA-approved enhanced flu vaccines are designed specifically to boost the immune response. Unfortunately, not many older adults are aware of those high dose and adjuvanted options. Last week, Engine Group, a survey company, conducted a survey of 1,000 Americans for the Alliance, and we found that 75% of respondents have never heard of a high dose or an adjuvanted flu vaccine. So please tell your friends and family and be sure that everyone is getting the flu vaccine that's best for them. The second new resource that we released today is an update to a document we produced a few years ago, The Truth About Vaccines. This fact sheet debunks common misinformation and disinformation about childhood vaccines, adult vaccines, and now COVID-19 vaccines. It also gives tips on how to spot misinformation and disinformation. Since the start of the pandemic, people have been exposed to an abundance of health misinformation and disinformation about COVID-19 vaccines and vaccines in general. While misinformation is false information created and spread regardless of an intent to harm or deceive, disinformation is a type of misinformation that is designed to be deliberately deceptive. Both forms cause massive confusion and fear and lead people to decline vaccines and reject other scientifically proven health and safety measures. We designed this fact sheet to arm older adults with the truth about vaccines. We know that they often play a really important role in their families as authorities on topics like health, and having these facts at their fingertips can help them debunk myths and encourage vaccination. This is critical because we know that even small amounts of misinformation and disinformation can be harmful. One study found that only a brief exposure to COVID-19 vaccine misinformation and disinformation caused the number of people willing to get vaccinated to go down by 6.4%. And that's just a brief exposure. False news stories are 70% more likely to be shared than true stories. And another study found that 67% of adults who had not yet received the COVID-19 vaccine had heard at least one COVID-19 vaccine myth and either believed it to be true or weren't sure if it was true. And the confusion isn't getting much better. That same survey I just talked about that we conducted of 1,000 Americans just last week found that only 43% of respondents are very confident or somewhat confident about the credibility of vaccine information that they see online. With all of the false stories being shared, It's not surprising that it's hard to sift through and determine facts from fiction. I know that our speakers today will shine important spotlights on what we all can do to help spread the facts about vaccines. So it's now my pleasure to introduce our first speaker. Donna Butts is the Executive Director of Generations United, a nonprofit dedicated to improving the lives of children, youth, and older adults through intergenerational collaboration, public policies, and programs for all. For more than 30 years, Donna has worked in nonprofit organizations, including the YMCA, Covenant House, the National 4-H Council, and the National Organization on Adolescent Pregnancy, Parenting, and Prevention. As an internationally sought-after speaker, author, and advocate, she frequently speaks on intergenerational connections, grandparents raising grandchildren, and policies effective across the lifespan. Donna has served as an at-large delegate to the 2005 White House Conference on Aging and has been invited by the UN to sit on 4 expert panels on intergenerational solidarity and other issues. She's been recognized as the top nonprofit leader and was awarded the 2004 National Council on Aging's Jack Osofsky Award for Leadership, Creativity, and Innovation in Programs and Services for Older Persons, and in 2017, International Federation for Family Development Award. We are so excited to hear from Donna today. She's going to share information about a really fabulous campaign, Generations United Grandparents Day. They're valuing vaccines across the generation campaign, and her insights on the role that grandparents play in sharing information with their friends, families, and community members. I also want to urge folks to check out a podcast that Donna and I just did for This Is Growing Old, the Alliance's podcast. You can find it wherever you listen to your podcasts. And before I hand it over to Donna, I want to encourage everyone to ask questions, please, at any time. You can enter them into the Q&A. We're actually going to field them all at the end. So please feel free to enter those. Take it away, Donna.
Well, thank you, Lindsay, and thank you to the Alliance for Aging Resource for this opportunity to be with you today on this webinar, but also for joining Generations United and our other partners in celebrating Grandparents' Day, which was yesterday. And Grandparents' Day has been around for 30 or 40 years, but what we're trying to do with Grandparents' Day is really make it a time to do something grand with or on behalf of another generation. And I can't think of anything more important than vaccinations and what that means in particular today. So I am going to see if I can advance my slides, because I don't know about you, but I'm tired of looking at my face. All right. All right, thank you. What I want to talk to you about today is promoting vaccinations across generations and why this is so important and why Generations United became involved. I want to talk a little bit about Generations United for those of you that don't know us, and also talk about a new report that we issued this spring on trends in multi-generational households, because of course that makes vaccinations across generations even more important. And then a bit about our campaign, Valuing Vaccinations Across Generations, and the campaign tools that are available to anyone who's interested in using those. And then some of our specific work with grandfamilies, grandparents, and other relatives raising children. So first, a little bit about Generations United. We were founded over 35 years ago, and our mission continues to be the same, which is to improve the lives of children, youth, and older adults through intergenerational collaboration. When we were founded, one of our founders said, we really formed Generations United to argue for a caring society, for one that cared about our bookend generations, our youngest and our oldest. And we continue to do that work today, supporting quality intergenerational programs, educating people about the importance of healthy intergenerational communities and using spaces and places to connect generations rather than separate them. And then grand families and multi-generational families and the important roles that they play in our country as well as around the world. We really do this work through a dual strategy of program and public policy. And what we found out in a poll that we did with the Eisner Foundation through Harris Interactive a couple of years ago is it's really what Americans and what people want, is they want the opportunity to be connected with other generations. They don't want to live in those silos or those age segregated communities. One of the things I want to really, let's see if I can figure out how to go backwards. What I really want to focus on today has to do with intergenerational lifestyles and living. And I'm going to touch on multi-generational families, which have been increasing in our country, as well as grand families. When it comes to this type of living environment, there are grand families housing, there are intergenerational home sharing, which is starting to gain some interest. Oftentimes it's a college student with an older adult who needs that extra income or that extra pair of hands to help them stay in their own home, while a younger person gets a much better rent rate and is able to not carry as much student loan debt. So intergenerational home sharing. There's also older adults living on campuses. We're seeing more campuses either building senior housing or actually incorporating older adults into their dorms. And then of course, there are intergenerational communities, those that really think about and plan for intergenerational living. One example is Rancho Mission Viejo, which is in California. It was created on the last open space in Orange County, California. And we were called in probably about 15, 16 years ago to help them really envision what their community could look like if they took into consideration wanting to appeal to people of all generations. So you can see in this marketing ad that they really have made sure that they're focusing on intergenerational living and the plus that that is. So now with multi-generational households, which we see on the next slide, what we found is back in 2011, we did a survey of multi-generational families. And at that point, there were about 7% of the families that we polled said they lived in multi-generational households. 10 years later, that number increased by 271%, up to 26% of the respondents. And what we said back when the recession occurred and we did the first poll in 2011 is that people may have come together by need. They stayed together by choice. And that's what we've seen is that the numbers have continued to increase. And in particular, as we're grappling with COVID, many families found the way that they could survive even stronger was when they came together under one roof. So as we'll see on the next slide, we know that intergenerational, multi-generational living is here to stay. And in fact, 72% of the families say that they'll continue to live in a multi-generational household. So what we as a country need to make sure that we do is help support the education about the families, help people to understand that these really are families that deserve our respect, our encouragement, because so oftentimes people look and think it's a weakness or a deficit. But in fact, so for so many families, it really does help them in many ways, whether it's financially, emotionally, with childcare, with elder care. It helps in so many ways when they combine their resources and live together. Now, another form of a multi-generational household is a grand family. And in the next slide, what you see is that the numbers of grand families are also continuing to increase. Today, there are about 8 million children who live with a relative who says they're the head of household. So it could be a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle. The majority of those are being raised by that relative as opposed to having multiple generations in the household. And what's significant about it is when you compare that number to the number that are in the formal foster care system, it's about 1 to 18. And so grand families, kinship families are really important in terms of holding our communities together. And as you see on the next slide, one of the reasons why that's so important is that the children fare better when they're raised by relatives. They have a stronger sense of belonging. They experience fewer placements. They're not shuffled from one foster home to another. A relative is much more likely to stay with them, to help them stay connected to their roots, to their history, to the stories that make families strong and that make family members even stronger when they have those roots. Now, what we were seeing in the country before the pandemic was an epidemic, and the family numbers were increasing because of the opioid epidemic, and communities, states, counties were relying on relatives to step in. And then with the pandemic, we've seen that number increase even more. They know that relatives will always be there and that they plan to be there. But what we needed to do was to move quickly to create some guides, some supports to help the families understand how to live together during the pandemic, which was, and continue to live together as they are. So on the next slide, what I want to talk about was that we're really learning from experience. And what we have to do is make sure that we're not continuing to silo our approaches, our policies, our programs. And we knew that as we were thinking about vaccinations, that we weren't the experts when it comes to vaccines. However, we are the experts when it comes to how to connect generations and how to respect the roles that younger and older people can play in educating and supporting other family members. So with the support of Pfizer, we launched the Valuing Vaccinations Across Generations campaign as an awareness campaign to really build on and bridge the importance of immunizations across generations. Because what we saw were a lot of people that talked about how important it is for children, how important it is for older adults, but nobody talking about the fact that grandpa can protect their grandchild, a grandchild can protect their grandparents. If we think about this through an intergenerational lens and have those intergenerational conversations, it's not just about you, it's about your family and all of us. And so we wanted to develop the tools as well as the campaign to really promote that message and the fact that they were important across generations. So in 2015, we launched a unique campaign that's on the next slide that was really focused on the importance of vaccinations across generations. We developed strong strategic partners because, as I said, we knew enough to know that we weren't vaccination or immunization experts, but the Gerontological Society of America and the American Academy of Pediatrics became our core partners on this. So we were able to also help to bridge their expertise and they're working together through this. We had other advisors in particular that helped us with strategy and with messaging so that we could develop compelling content and engage in social and traditional media. So our campaign tools, as outlined on the next slide, we developed a website called Bandage of Honor that is available and has all of the campaign tools on it. It has infographics depicting the value of vaccinations across generations. We've been fortunate to develop 3 infographics now that really pull together the need for all generations. We created memes with celebrities and important people and video testimonials because we know that there are these different messengers and different trusted voices. We created a discussion guide to really help families have some of those difficult conversations. And we also, of course, worked on traditional and social media, including op-eds that were signed by the Gerontological Society, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and Generations United. Now, in the discussion guide, there were a few things that we included in the discussion guide, including some of the examples I just talked about, but also specific conversation starters. They range from Elvis getting the first polio shot for the Ed Sullivan show, so that people could realize that, in fact, celebrities have been used before and what a powerful tool that could be. We also talked about Baldo, the dog who really was the beginning of the Iditarod, who made sure that a vaccine was taken by dog sled to Nome, Alaska. In the future, what we're hoping to do is to really take that discussion guide and break it into smaller, more manageable pieces that families can work with and use together. Let's see if the enter button is going to work. All right. So thank you to whoever's advancing the slides for me, because I don't seem to be able to do it. So as I said, some of the tools that we used were that the website, the discussion guide. We developed 3 infographics that were also carrying messages that were very important in terms of that what's happened recently, as you know, is that people have forgotten to keep up, or they haven't had a priority to keeping up with their current regular vaccinations. And so we're trying to remind people that it's very important now to make sure that we're keeping up with vaccinations. So this is a shot of the website that I'd encourage everyone to go to get the campaign materials. And then there also is a shot of the vaccine infographic, social media, and what we found, because it was a short-term campaign, what we found was that we were able to successfully get in front of a number of people. The reach of the campaign was about 61 million. And we did that through, as I said, different types of media that we engaged during the campaign and to get the message out there. So in terms of grand families reach, and discussions, which is one of the areas that we, Generations United, has a unique opportunity to contribute. We asked our grand families, our grand friends, what it was that they were hearing from their peers and their colleagues. And what we learned from them was that there was a lot of hesitancy about who was going to share with them the information that they trusted. They wanted to see it from someone who looked like them. They wanted to hear it from somebody who sounded like them. And they wanted more information, more factual information. And so that's what we've worked to do, is to try to make sure that we are able to share that information. We continue to work with our grand voices to help educate, to help share information about how important it is that they keep telling members of their support groups and others about the importance. So when it comes to intergenerational opportunities, which is a slide right before this, we would like to have people think about some of the creative ways we can be sure that we're engaging different people, that we're engaging audiences. And so one way of doing that is to engage young people as the educators. And we worked with a wonderful young woman in Denver who was part of a Latino intergenerational vaccine education project. And she said that what she loved about it was she felt like she was making a difference, like she was able to contribute to what was going on in her community. We also hope that we can refresh the materials and the resources that we've created. We want to make sure that we're providing that trusted voice for grandparents raising grandchildren. I think there's some things that we can do with intergenerational storytelling and sharing those stories across generations. And then, of course, as the Alliance joined us this year, there's that opportunity to use Grandparents' Day and other platforms to educate and be a part of it. So I would just encourage you in your work to think about that unique perspective, that unique lens of the intergenerational interdependence, because we really are stronger together. So thank you for being here today. Thank you, Lindsay and the Alliance, for this opportunity. And I'll turn it back over to Lindsay. Thank you.
Donna, thank you so much for your partnership and for all of those insights on the role that intergenerational families and grandfamilies are playing in getting loved ones to get vaccinated. I'm excited to now introduce you to Dr. Todd Werlin. Dr. Werlin is a pediatrician, a child advocate, a vaccine expert, and a misinformation expert. He's a Chief Executive Officer of Kids Plus Pediatrics in Pittsburgh. He's led clinical vaccine research for 14 years, including more than 40 studies as both a sub-investigator and principal investigator. He's also served in a variety of roles as consultant and advisor on vaccine-related projects and speaks nationally and internationally on vaccine advocacy and communication. While Dr. Wolynn has been a longtime vaccine advocate, in 2017, he and his coworker, Chad Herman, doubled down on their advocacy. After their efforts to educate patients about the HPV vaccine came under attack by anti-vaxxers. It was then that they decided not to back down, but to speak louder and to support other advocates. They created Shots Heard Around the World, a nonprofit dedicated to supporting, defending, and galvanizing physicians and other vaccine advocates on social media and beyond. They have also become a trusted and somewhat amusing source for vaccine facts, taking to TikTok, Facebook, and other social media platforms as Vaxman and Robin. I urge you to check them out to see their creative way of sharing the facts, including some costumes and a little bit of singing. Dr. Werlin, we're grateful to have you here to share your insights on how to spot misinformation and disinformation and to stop its spread. I know many in our audience want the facts so that they can share them with those they love and encourage them to protect themselves and their families with vaccines. Thank you so much. The floor is yours.
Thanks very much. I'm setting my timer for about 19 minutes. I know you guys said about 20, so I'll try and be a good citizen here too. So, all right. I pulled an audible and I think I am going to share some slides, but my name is Todd Werlin. It's good to meet you. As you heard from Lindsay, I am a pediatrician. I'm CEO of an independent pediatric practice in Pittsburgh, and I've done a lot of things that are vaccine related. So I'm going to see if I can go ahead and share with you just a few slides that I put together. So let's go ahead and start this slideshow. Okay, so how I got involved in this particular role, because I'd done 14 years of clinical vaccine research, but as you heard, Lindsay said, we put together a video on HPV vaccine where there again was a lot of disinformation. We were attacked. We were one of the first large-scale global attacks, attacked from all over the world, 24/7, over 800 different accounts attacking our Kids Plus Pediatrics independent pediatric practice for having the audacity to talk about the safety of vaccines, particularly HPV vaccine as cancer prevention. And we decided to fight back. So we've done a few things. We've done research. We created a toolkit for other healthcare advocates, particularly vaccine advocates, to speak up. We've created a vetted volunteer network around the world that's 1,500 vetted members strong now to counteract the attacks on the vaccine advocates that are out there that are speaking up on social media, and an awareness campaign. So this is what that awareness campaign has looked like. We have been all over the place, and perhaps this is a little bit of humble bragging, but we have absolutely tried very hard to get the word out. So we've been on the cover of, let's see here, the New York Times and a couple of academic journals, the New York Times, Science Times, and LA Times. A couple documentaries, a few documentaries, a guy named Z-Dog, who's a doctor and a big social media personality. But the biggest hit apparently came when we got onto People magazine. So if you still have your June issue around, if you go to page 77, we're there. We let Ricky Martin take the cover. But why are we getting so much coverage? And the answer is that we've really taken communication very seriously. And every one of us has a role to play when it comes to communication. I say this because this does not just have to be healthcare professionals. It's every one of us. Sadly, communication can be twisted and used for nefarious means. And that definitely has happened and is happening in ways that we've never quite seen in terms of the powerful tools that are available. And it's why we're in the dilemma that we're in right now. And that tool is social media. So with social media, it is far and away the most powerful communication tool we've ever seen. Propaganda and disinformation, and as Lindsay told you, misinformation is kind of mistaken information that gets shared and has negative effects, but it's not necessarily with nefarious or ulterior motives, whereas disinformation is absolutely pumped out with an alternate or ulterior motives. So you guys all play a role when it comes to social media. Because when we see something, we want our relatives, we want our kids or our grandkids or our friend network to know about it. We'll oftentimes like it and we'll share and we'll send it to people. But you may be part of the problem doing that, because if you're not certain that the information is accurate, then you may be actually unintentionally helping propagate disinformation or at least misinformation. It's amazing how they do that. So we as human beings, we're so successful as a species on this planet, somewhat to our detriment, but we are successful in that we've flourished, that we've been able to go to, into space and down into the bottoms of the oceans and to the tops of mountains, partially because we are wired for threat. And that's where people will play on this natural innate instinct to be worried, like what do I need to be worried about next? And so social media is used to play on your concern for threat, your threat for yourself, your family, your health, the health of your loved ones. And so you have a tendency to read those things, not only read them, but to share them and to like them. They're somewhat sensational oftentimes. Did you know that this medication can cause cancer? Did you know that physicians might be secretly working with government, right? I mean, conspiracies, things like that. Some of them might sound so sensational, you might not even give it a second thought, but many people will. And the social media platforms themselves, Facebook, Google, Twitter, groups like this, have actually made billions of dollars because the way they make money is they charge per click on or like or share per message that is pushed out there. And so sensational content, things that are just almost fantastical and unbelievable, get shared a ton, right? Like if I went on today and said 4 million people today in the US got this vaccine and nobody got hurt, that's not sexy, that's not interesting, and that's not going to get shared. And this has been proven with research study upon research study, where you say good, feel good information, even if it's from an authoritative resource about something about healthcare, it goes up, gets a few hundred or thousand, maybe tens of thousands of views and drops off quickly. But if you push out a conspiracy that did you know that the government is actually pushing a vaccine that can sterilize you, right? I mean, it makes no sense, but boom, it blows up and it goes into millions of views and it resonates and the companies make tons of money off of it, billions. The people that are pushing it have an agenda and they get resources from it. And so we need to be careful before you like and share things, even if it's like got your hair on the back of your neck standing up and you're like, oh my goodness, I got to make sure my kids know about this. Check the sources, see if it makes sense. Ask somebody else, does that seem realistic? So this is why social media is so important. In 2008, about 10% of people had social media profiles. And when I used to lecture to audiences, I would ask, like, does anybody out there use social media? And years ago, it was always kind of a smaller group that was slowly growing and growing. But when you really think what social media is now, it could even be the New York Times, or it can be different things that are app-based that then tie into different platforms, whether it's Facebook, again, or Twitter, or Instagram, or Pinterest, or things like that. So if you look at the number of people that are now saying that they have a social media profile, it's now, pretty darn high, close to 80%. And again, it's the most powerful communication tool we've ever had. And I want to distinguish two types of information transfer. One is called pooling information, right? It's what we used to do when you went to the Yellow Pages and you said, I want to look up a good florist. And you go to the Yellow Pages and you'd literally pull the information off the page. You'd look it up. You'd look by florist, you look down for somebody maybe in your area, and you'd write the number down and you call them. That's not that different from a web query. I want to find out about a florist. You're actually going to their website to try and pull that information down. That's still pooling. Pooled information is helpful, but it doesn't propagate the way that pushed information does. And social media apps push information. Once you go on to a social media app, like Facebook again, or Pinterest or Instagram or whatever you're on, and you say, I like this app and I like the social media platform, and you give them your information, they push information into what's called your feed every day. Every day on your phone, information is being pushed to you effortlessly. And it's now doing that to billions of people around the world. They're getting information pushed to them. Here's something we suggest for you to read. Here's somebody that you might want to learn about. That is how billions of dollars are made by these companies, and how people that are pushing disinformation now can be so influential. Even though in the United States, it's the minority of people that believe in these conspiracies, and it's a minority of the people that are truly anti-vaccine, but they're punching well above their weight with the use of tools like social media. So we want to make sure we're not part of the problem, but we're part of the solution. If you look at what doctors and healthcare providers, and when I lecture to people, I say this is about a number of hours in the year. That tiny little sliver is about an hour's worth of time per year. That's maybe as much as I'm going to get face to face in the exam room. And I have been on a crusade telling healthcare providers, it's no longer optional. We need to be out on social media because there's a vacuum right now that's getting filled by disinformation. And I go on to tell them that these companies get it. These companies are on social media because they know that communication causes behavior change. Disney knows that they can get you to go on a Disney vacation if they get their ads in the right place and make the right suggestions. McDonald's knows that they can get you to eat another Big Mac. Starbucks knows they can get you to order another Frappuccino, right? So they're all on there because they have measured return on investment for doing so. And now healthcare providers that used to say, oh, that's beneath us, that's not professional. Oh, what if we violate HIPAA or private information? There's absolutely a way to be on social media as a healthcare provider. But again, you guys all play a role there as well. So that's 1 year's time. And we honestly don't even get an hour of face-to-face time with our patients. But the point is, healthcare providers can't assume all of our wisdom is going to be imparted within the four walls of our exam room or clinic. We need to be on social media too, because communication is behavior change, as I said. Kids Plus, my practice in Pittsburgh, about 100 employees, 3 offices, the last biggest independent practice in our region and known nationally, has taken very seriously this notion of really working with communication. So as you can see, not only do we have a full-time communications director, which is a rarity and actually pretty odd, we have a full-blown communications studio we call Evidence-Based Studios. And there we produce videos and we produce podcasts. And they're pretty darn good. I'm the co-host of a couple of shows that we do. And back in 2017, that's when we created that video called We Prevent Cancer, talking about the HPV vaccine. And it did quite well. Within 3 weeks, about 15,000 views, people making appointments saying that's a great information. But again, as you heard, it was dropped into an anti-vaccine group and we were attacked from around the world, literally. And people posting over 10,000 times to our Facebook, destroying our Yelp and our Google ratings. But this is what really got us launched into the fight about vaccine confidence and communication and hesitancy. And that's why a lot of the things I'm telling you really came out of this 2017 incident. That's what led to all those articles you saw on us and documentaries. So don't forget that it's not just anti-vaccine, but this anti-science movement that's now emerged really from a political faction that's doubled down and tripled down into really following this anti-science belief. Well, it's spilled over to not just anti-vaccine, but anti-mask. Sometimes they don't believe in climate change. They don't, believe in a variety of things. And it can really be weaponized. And that's the point I'm trying to make. When you start using social media to nefarious means, you can have really tremendously powerful effects, some of them being very negative. And so while I'm terrified for my kids and my kids' kids, I don't yet have grandchildren, but what world they'll be inheriting if we don't take climate change seriously. It is now well upon us. The question is, how much can we mitigate it? But we can't even get people to get a vaccine that's potentially going to save their lives. So we have an uphill battle, and we need to really focus on this. So the way that they use, as I told you, some of the tactics they use is to mix in fear, because it's one of the strongest driving emotions we have, stir in a little hate or distrust along with this disinformation. And they can punch, like I said, well above their weight, to the point of, changing legislative initiatives and school boards not enacting something as simple as a mask mandate that can save the lives of children. And children are now dying predictably and avoidably because we can't seem to get our heads around wearing these, even though last year every school district was wearing them. So yeah, this is that pull and push that we see between the groups of vaccine confidence. The green represents vaccine accepting. Prior to the COVID vaccine, that's the percentage of people that were very accepting of vaccines. The 23% were hesitant. They could kind of go in and out of that accepting, or hesitant doesn't mean anti-vaccine. It just means I have questions. There's nothing wrong with having questions, and healthcare providers need to be better trained in how to effectively answer their questions and also reassure them. And it's really only 1 to 2% of the population that's truly anti-vaccine. What you see here are two forces. There's the face-to-face encounter we have, which can be powerful if we're trained appropriately, but there's the 24/7 exposure that people have to social media. And sometimes they even bring this into the exam room with them while I'm trying to examine the kid, and they're on social media. I'm like, can you put the phone down for a second? Quite powerful. So years and years, a few years ago, I wrote a post about how this became the new battle that we were fighting. And one of the stories you need to know is that there are ulterior motives driving the anti-vaccine movement. It might seem like, oh, they're just in this for altruistic reasons, that they're just worried that it's not safe. But the people that are pulling the strings in the background make money from this. Sometimes it's as simple as don't vaccinate, but use my essential oils or my crystals, right? That's like a, don't use this, but use my product and I'll sell it to you. Or it's political, particularly on the harder right side of the spectrum. People will say, government shouldn't be telling you about these things or about the vaccines. I'll get them out of your way, vote for me. So there's political gain that's used, and that's occurring in a very strong way right now. And there's also power. And if you haven't heard about this, you want to hear true conspiracies. We know for a fact that hostile foreign countries are actually paying and creating social media accounts to create distrust in the FDA, the CDC, our federal government, in vaccines and science itself, because democracies are vulnerable to disinformation in a way that is not true in authoritarian governments. So they're real conspiracies of hostile foreign countries pushing disinformation to try and erode the trust and the strength of our own democracy. And that's a true statement. We have good data behind that. So I'm going to make sure I leave a couple minutes left to just close up and talk. And then I think we'll have a little time after that. But what I want to reiterate is that disinformation can be weaponized, and it is weaponized, and has been for decades and centuries, really, right? Propaganda and demonizing the side that isn't aligned with your interests, making them seem less human, right? That's always been an approach, but it's been put on steroids, which have now been put on steroids in terms of social media. Almost all the world carries around a communication device, even in relatively poor countries, right? If you think about the Arab Spring, they were able to successfully overthrow multiple pretty strong governments just by using their phones. And oftentimes those were text-based campaigns. Now we have smartphones, right? With the ability to send you images and videos. And we need to be careful about our role in spreading disinformation. Check out the sources. If you're not certain, check out another trusted person before you like and before you hit share, because these people with these ulterior motives play on our fears, recognize that we want to keep our children and our grandchildren safe. And so by letting you know, hey, that COVID vaccine, just like that HPV vaccine, it could cause infertility. Who wouldn't be terrified of thinking that I might be sterilizing somebody? Maybe this mRNA technology is too new. All that's baloney. Just to be clear on the COVID vaccine, so you all know in my last couple minutes here, is the mRNA technology has been around for close to 2 decades. And while this is the first mass vaccination using the technology, it's not new in that respect. We've had this vaccine out for COVID for over now a year when you go back to the first trials that were run. First mass vaccination started close to 9 months ago. So we now have, and then over 350 million doses administered. So we have amazing information on this vaccine. Most serious and even rare untoward or unwanted effects from vaccines will happen in the first day to maybe first 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks max. We do not have any models to show that something's going to pop up 5 and 10 years down the road. That's why one of the reasons infertility resonates with everyone, because you can't really easily disprove it. You have to wait 10 or 20 years. So that's where they got you. And trust me, they try multiple different strategies and they measure and see which ones are resonating. And then when they see which ones resonate, like infertility, then they keep pushing it out. By the way, the HPV vaccine, which now is created over 17 years ago, hundreds of millions of doses given, preventing tons of cancer. Guess what they said about that one? Causes infertility. Again, complete lie, complete BS. But they know that's a lie that resonates and they keep pushing it. So I want you to realize that the COVID vaccines are safe and effective. We seem to see that Pfizer and Moderna seem to be doing a more powerful job than J&J, but all of them are good. Boosters definitely look like they're going to be coming out. We'll hear more about the schedule on that. And I do want to reiterate Lindsay's words on the flu vaccine. Absolutely, please talk to your healthcare provider about the flu vaccine. And the adjuvanted or the high dose Flu vaccines are absolutely the right group, above 65 for sure. It gives a more robust protection because our immune systems as we get older aren't as robust. And you should be getting your flu vaccines soon. Ideal times are usually, they say, in that October, later October, mid-October timeframe. But if you can get it and you don't think you're going to have a chance to go back, get it when you can get it. But nobody, and I will say this right now, and I see I'm down about a minute, so I'm going to just stop my timer so I'm being a responsible speaker here. You do not want to go to the hospital right now, not only because COVID is circulating, but if you have not heard, because of the people that refuse to wear these, that refuse to get COVID vaccines, there is not a health system that I am aware of that isn't feeling some strain. And I would say almost the majority that I've been looking into are suffering severe strain, some so bad, particularly in our southern states, where disinformation is rampant, particularly given the governor's stance in some of these states, where healthcare is almost breaking down, and has actually in northern, I think, Idaho or Montana, has broken down because of their inability to keep up with the sick COVID patients. So now having something as mild as a broken arm, or God forbid, more seriously, a heart attack or a trauma, they can't even get care for those people because they have no open beds. People are being sent hundreds of miles away if they can get there in time. So with that, I want to thank you for the opportunity for speaking with all of you, and I will unshare my screen.
Dr. Werlin, thank you so much. I think you shared some really incredible facts that I think can help us all as we share information. I know some folks, happily share things on social media, and then there's others that hold back because they're not sure what's true. And I wanted to flag that one of the resources that we've released today gives some tips on figuring out if it's true or not. So do your research, dig, find out if what you're sharing is reliable. But we have some questions queued up that get to the facts. One of the questions, Dr. Wolynn, you mentioned the flu vaccine, the ideal time, if, unless you were at the doctor and you want to get it right now, the ideal time being October. But earlier, when the COVID-19 vaccines were first available, there was some advice to stagger, to wait a few weeks between the COVID vaccine and the flu or pneumonia or shingles or whatever else you need and are due for. Can you talk about timing of co-administering the vaccine?
Sure. Yeah, there wasn't, since the vaccine again was newer, there wasn't clear recommendations on could this be co-administered or not. So they deferred to a more, as you've indicated, a 2-week kind of buffer. And at that point, they thought that might be the best way to start out. We've since now moved forward to allowing co-administration of the COVID vaccine with other vaccines. So that could be flu, or it could be hepatitis B, it could be other vaccines. I will point out that, the COVID vaccines can sometimes make you feel a little lousy. I felt pretty tired and achy after my vaccine. I will also say when I got my shingles vaccine, I felt pretty lousy after I got that one. So if you have the ability to space the shingles vaccine a little bit, I would still talk to your doctor if they think that's reasonable, because those both can kind of make you feel a little walloped. But again, there's clear indication for the allowance of co-administration of vaccines. So always talk to your primary care provider, but I would have no reservations about getting, for instance, if you're due for a COVID booster and can get your flu vaccine, heck yeah, go ahead and get them together. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly taken my kiddos for appointments and they've received 2 or 3. And I appreciate your comments on if you tend to feel a little lousy after the flu vaccine, maybe, you think about that, but better a vaccine than no vaccine.
Absolutely.
Donna, we have a question here on what reach the Generations United campaign had. And I'm thinking maybe it's the valuing vaccines across the generations, and also was it an international campaign?
Yes, we were fortunate. I love the way that Dr. Werlin did the reach slide of the work that they've been doing, because it really shows the logos of those. We were fortunate to do the Diane Rehm show, to be in a number of different publications. And I think, again, that combination of messengers, when it was the Gerontological Society and the American Academy of Pediatrics with Generations United as a bridge, gave us a special platform and opportunity to really show the unity that I think was critical. It is critical, continues to be critical. We were fortunate to also branch out internationally. So we had colleagues in Spain and in Japan that we worked with. And what I loved was that they took the materials that we created and made them relevant and culturally appropriate in their countries. So in Spain, they translated the infographic, but they took the discussion guide and they broke it into parts and pieces, and they worked with healthcare providers in the country. In Japan, they took the infographic and they came up with ninja warriors that were the vaccines fighting off the attack of these creatures coming at them. They also delivered a lot of the educational material through robots who would go around to older adults and speak or show a little movie as they were waiting somewhere. They came up with some just really, they also said that the community newspapers were still the way that a lot of people in Japan get their news. So they took out ads and did stories in like neighborhood-based papers. So what I loved was the fact that we could create a base of information, base of materials, and then they could be adapted so that they would be accepted.
Thank you. I love that. Dr. Werlin, I want to ask you a question. It's a little bit selfish because it's about kiddos. I know, obviously our work on vaccines is focused on older adults, but also this is a great time to ask the questions about kids because we are talking about intergenerational families and we're talking about older adults speaking with their kids and their grandkids about vaccination. But I'm wondering, there's been a lot, it's also an unfair question because there's a lot of mixed messages out there, but what do you think? Do you have any thoughts on the timing for a lot of your younger kids getting vaccinated for COVID?
Yeah, so what we're hearing right now for COVID vaccination, the Pfizer data has been submitted and being reviewed, and the request for an expedited approval in no way diminishes the science. It may speed the timeline up. And so what we're now hearing is that Pfizer's COVID vaccine could be available for kids ages 5 to 11 years of age, because don't forget it's already available now for 12 and older. And so the suggestion is that by October, likely not later than early November, we may be able to start vaccinating kids ages 5 to 11. There was, and there are studies that are ongoing for children down to 6 months of age. And the thinking originally, again, that was going to be much longer, not be well until 2022. But there now is some indication, because those studies have enrolled quickly and we have good data coming out of those, that it's possible that 6 months to 2 years could be available, or 6 months to 5 years could be available as early as the end of the year, but it still could be early 2022.
I know a lot of us are anxiously waiting, so thank you for that update.
And if I could add one more thing, it's now very clear, if you're intending to get pregnant or pregnant, that this vaccine, the COVID vaccines, are absolutely recommended. They're recommended by the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. So people thinking, oh, I don't want it to mess with my pregnancy. As a matter of fact, we know unequivocally now the vaccine is highly protective during pregnancy. Getting COVID during pregnancy is an incredibly big health risk to both the mother and the fetus. And there have been deaths and plenty of bad outcomes now from COVID infections during pregnancy. So even though that's not my territory per se, I want you all to know, if you have family members who are thinking of getting pregnant or getting pregnant, they should not worry about the vaccine. Matter of fact, they should seek out the vaccine as well as anybody who hasn't been vaccinated.
Great. Also on COVID, do you think it would be valuable to get a COVID antibody test as a way to check the need for a booster sooner than the 6 to 8 month period?
There's no data to suggest that approach is going to have any impact, and I don't think there are any guidelines from CDC to indicate that that's what we should be doing. I always recommend you talk to your healthcare professional. If you're immunocompromised, if you're worried that you need it sooner than the recommendations that are coming out, please talk to your doctor or your specialist. Those are the people that can help you through that decision making. But an antibody test, at least somebody just getting that on their or having their doctor order that as a means of determining, I wouldn't do that. I would talk to your healthcare provider.
Okay. Donna, this question is for you. I'm hoping you will share a little bit about how those intergenerational families have really been uniquely impacted by COVID and are continuing to be impacted. Because I think that it's a really important consideration when we're talking about why we should be getting vaccinated.
It's so important. I think we all remember when we were first faced with this pandemic, and the message was very clear that generations should separate from each other, that older and younger people shouldn't be together, that they should separate. And if you were just visiting your grandchildren or you had an older neighbor, that wasn't so tough. But if you were living together, you didn't have a choice. And also oftentimes children who are being raised by grandparents have a number of special needs, and you couldn't necessarily say, don't touch me, stay away from me. You know, they need that touch and that cuddling. So what we did was we were able to create some fact sheets for the families. And because we have this Grand Voices network around the country, we were able to get messages out to the families early, as well as educate the Grand Voices. And then we were also fortunate because we had a couple of foundations that gave us funding. So we created a Grand Families COVID Relief Fund, and we were able to get money directly to the grandparents who needed things like a door in a house. They needed a window fixed. They needed transportation to the doctor. They needed meals delivered. Because one thing, again, when you've got small children, trying to figure out how you get to the grocery store to pick up groceries and the child's not touching everything was a challenge. So the families learned ways of making sure that they were very cautious in terms of cleanliness, mask wearing, getting vaccines as soon as they could, but also ways that they could continue to support each other. And we're obviously still in the midst of a lot of that. But what's really important is that the grandparents and other relatives are playing an incredible role in our country by taking care of these children. And we need to make sure that we're supporting them.
Absolutely. Well, we have two other questions. One is logistics, which I will answer. The question of whether or not the slides will be shared. We're actually recording the video, so we'll share the full video with everyone who has registered and more widely, so you can see it again or share it afterwards. The last question is really for both of you. So we have about 2 minutes now, but we know we've actually seen a lot of news on how well older adults are doing on vaccination. That there's incredibly high rates and a lot of willingness, but we are still seeing that there's about 20% of seniors that aren't fully vaccinated. So it's about 10 million folks. So just in closing, I'm wondering, I'd love your thoughts on what we can say, whether it's our family members or it's our audiences through work. What can we say to those seniors who still aren't vaccinated?
You want me to start, or Donna, do you want to start?
Yeah.
This is a very, very, very serious virus. It is one of the most contagious viruses in my training that I was taught to look for were things as contagious as measles or chickenpox. This is at that level, and it is potentially lethal, clearly in that age group, right? So if you're above 65, this is a tremendously bad virus to get. It has a high likelihood of causing some symptoms that could be serious, could result in hospitalization, intensive care unit admission, or death. It isn't to be played with. That we have a safe and effective vaccine. If people haven't yet been vaccinated, it's important to try and figure out why, to try and leverage things within a trusted relationship to try and convince them how important it is. Sadly, again, we've seen the weaponized disinformation really delude people down the wrong path, but anything we can do, and oftentimes one of the most influential people is their trusted healthcare provider. So if we can somehow get communication going on with them and their doc, that can help too.
And I would agree. What I would say is I'd go back to Mr. Rogers, who said, look for the healers, look for the helpers, look for those that are there. Those are the trusted messengers, our doctors, our providers, our faith-based leaders. And in a family, it's oftentimes that elder. But it also works in an intergenerational way where if a child or your teenage grandchild says, I want you to get vaccinated because I want you to be here as I'm growing up, that can be incredibly powerful too.
Thank you both. Well, that is all the time we have. I'm really grateful for all the work you're doing and for taking the time to share it with us. There's a lot of people that have joined that want to find ways to get the facts. And I think we've all shared some resources. So please check out all of our websites and our social media channels and find the facts, and please share them. And thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you.
Thank you.